Welcome back, guys, to the TheSpurgeonPiper. This is Wilson with you. Now, recently on the Patreon channel, I put up an Ask Me Anything post. Ask Me Anything, Q&A time for any questions pertaining to pipe tobacco and pipes and theology and farming or whatever else that someone would like to ask. A lot of the Patreon members did ask some questions. That's what I'm covering here. So, I'm going to answer all these questions as I go along. If you want to see more of the questions answered, go onto the Patreon channel where I'll be answering all of them in a video, a longer video, but you'll certainly have some of them here. So we're going to begin with Jacob Vincent's question. He says, does anyone in your church take issue with you smoking a pipe? And if so, how do you navigate it? Let me start there. He goes on with another question, but let me start there. Does anyone have an issue with me smoking a pipe? Not at all. In fact, a lot of the men's gatherings, we smoke a pipe together. The whole congregation just about knows of this channel. So it's not really a problem whatsoever. And I will say that's something you just find in the confessionally reformed world, or frankly just outside of the broad evangelical world. So in the more historic traditions, that's less of a concern. You have a lot of guys in the Lutheran, Presbyterian, Reformed Baptist, or Congregational Baptist, Anglican, and certainly like Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox. That's usually not something of a concern. And the lower, what they call low church churches, and what I mean, or low liturgy churches, that's just basically your typical evangelical church, non-denominational, some of the Baptist, Pentecostal, things like that. That's where it usually comes into a concern. And there's a long history pertaining to that, or rather a history that goes back at least 150 years. And a lot of it has to do with how alcohol was beginning to be viewed and other similar habits in the evangelical world. And so back where I originally grew up in like more of a Southern Baptist front, there probably were some who would have had a concern with me smoking a pipe. However, if you think of all the tobacco related products, pipe smoking is certainly the most welcomed. I always found grandpas or uncles or dads who smoked a pipe, and so it was fairly accepted because it's usually seen with those who are more studious, intellectual, things like that. However, let's just say you are having that problem. What should you do? I've always given the encouragement, whether someone's a pastor or just a layman in the church, treat it if you say workout. Most of us, if we do some type of workout, other hobby, garden, what have you, you don't hide it, but you don't flaunt it. And that's usually a good guidance. When I was pastoring a church, that was more of a Southern Baptist church, and there could have been some who had issues with pipe smoking. I didn't flaunt it. You know, I didn't have it up in a conversation because I just don't do that, just like I don't with working out per se, unless you ask me. So I'm honest, but I don't flaunt it. Even if you came to my home, you might see some pipes out in my office, but as far as paraphernalia throughout the house, you're not going to see anything. So we want to be honest. We're called to honesty, but don't see like you have to flaunt it. If you flaunt something, you put it forward, it's usually going to get a bad reaction. So hopefully that's helpful there. Going on to GL blank. GL blank, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I open a tin of aged tobacco at let's say the 5-year mark, smoke a little, seal it back up, will I continue to age, or is aging a one-off opportunity? That's a good question, GL Bank. I think I'm going to handle this correctly, and someone's watching this, you just have more experience on this matter, please chime. But will it continue to age, or is aging a one-off opportunity? One thing we need to consider is that European coin cuts, or circles, European tins like this, you usually call them European tins or coin tins, and then more the American style, they're going to age differently because how they are manufactured. The American style, which is like Cornell and Diehl, that's what we usually think of, as they seal these tins, there's air inside. And so there's anaerobic action occurring as the microbes feed on the tobacco. They produce sugar. So you've ever seen the picture, maybe you have some yourself that's been in a mason jar, you'll see little crystals grow, sugar crystals grow on the tobacco, or form on the tobacco. That's the process of the aging, the work of the anaerobic action occurring. From what I understand, that's going to occur less in a sealed European tin because the oxygen is removed. So if you open this one after 5 years, you're really not interrupting much of anything. In fact, once you open it, you smoke it, and then you can't seal it back. You open this. So let's say you move it to a mason jar. you're actually going to do better. I've seen guys encourage, if you have a tin like this, take it out, throw it in a mason jar, and allow it to have that anaerobic action. All right. Now, when it comes to something like this, I think the answer is largely the same, even though aging has continued. So you open a tin after 5 years, you smoke some, you put it in a mason jar, let's say, it's going to continue to age. Maybe it was shortened or lessen, but it's going to continue to age as long as you have that mason jar tightened. You make sure it's airtight. You don't want it to dry out. Something to keep in mind. So there you have it. I hope that kind of answers your question. By and large, I don't think it's a concern. Now, if you kept opening and closing over time a jar of tobacco, you're probably going to have issues with drying out. And it may mess with the aging, but if you're just speaking of trying some quickly, smoking it, and then putting it in a mason sealed jar, do that. Do not put it back in one of these. It's going to dry out. But if you do that, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Geo Bank also answered or asked, can you share your church website? I would like to listen to you preach. Absolutely. I would love for you to listen to it if it is a blessing for you. And if you're interested, you can go to Covenant Baptist WF, WichitaFalls.com. That is the website page, and it'll take you to our YouTube channel as well. If you go under sermons, you can watch them there as well, but feel free to do so. We all go on to Sean. Sean asks, what is your read on the current state of the online pipe community? I've been revisiting some Country Squire radio episodes with some matches 860 mixed in. It doesn't seem like there are those major unifying voices like there once was. Interested to hear your thoughts. Great question. Something I handled a while back with Alan Harrelson when he first started his channel. So what is your read on the current state of the online pipe community? I don't know. It's bigger than it has ever been. I think there's more people smoking pipe than there ever has, despite both in the United States and abroad, despite government influence. But with the recent decades, 20 years, 30 years, I'd say there's more activity in the online pipe community. Now, are we missing some of our great leaders or figures that once started? Matches 860 was a beloved figure in the pipe community world. The men, John David Cole and Bo at the Country Squire Radio, they're fantastic. I started myself on listening to them. So it's frustration, or it's disappointing rather, that they're past or that they're gone as far as their voices. I know we still have John David Cole, of course, but we still have guys like TheSpurgeonPiper, who not only myself but plenty of you have cut your teeth on. He's still producing great content. There's guys like Stuff and Things, and there's a number of other channels that have been around that have been a benefit to many others. So not to mention that we have plenty of other online groups through different websites and Facebook pages and Discords that I think we're doing pretty well with the pipe community. Not to mention Instagram, there's always a good solid group there. So in that regard, I think we're doing well. You mentioned there doesn't seem to be any major unifying voices, and I just think because it's expanded. In the 10s to 2010s, when it really took off, maybe the late aughts, when the online communities really began to get going, there weren't a lot of people on, so there was a more enclosed group. But now there's loads of you guys out there, and so it is expanded in that voice or in that regard. And I don't know if there are any great unifiers yet. You still have great followings of someone like Mutton Chop. So that would be my viewpoint. I have a positive view. I think we're doing quite well. There's always room for someone to rise up and be more, unifying, but I don't know if that's totally necessary. Then we go on to Alex. Alex, you ask, I'm part of a church that is heading in the Reformed theology direction. We have some members who are struggling with some of the more controversial concepts associated with Reformed theology. How would you as a pastor answer some of the more complicated questions, like the notion of free will? If some are predestined for salvation, does that mean others are damned? Sorry for a heavy hitter. You could answer in a DM. I would just like others outside perspectives. Absolutely, Alex, and I have experience in this where I was before. My first and foremost, my comment is not knowing your church, not knowing the background, where they were, where they're going, what you were believing as a statement of faith in the first place. My first encouragement for the pastors is utmost patience and plenty of teaching. Do not make a change before you teach on it, regardless of what that is. It needs to be taught on. If it was a church that was heavily against Reformed theology, even more so teaching, but it certainly need to be taught on. Now, I am of the congregational front, where I'd say that the church has an authority, the local church does. If it was a situation where even after wonderful, graceful preaching, it was something not accepted by large of that congregation, then it probably answers your question. Though I would hope they would trust and have a respect for their pastor, that they would trust in his leadership on this matter. But with these questions, and I'm not going to get into picking apart some of those questions like free will, though, say if you really are Reformed holding to a confession, point them to, say, the Second London Baptist Confession that has a subject, or a chapter on free will, and covers it very well. Because one of the matters on this topic, or one of the realities of this topic, is there's a lot of straw men or misunderstandings when it comes to these topics. I grew up in the Young, Restless, and Reform movement, where a lot of guys posited that Calvinists or those who hold the doctrines of grace don't hold to a free will, which is just historically inaccurate and false. We do. It's in our confessions. We do believe. So all that to say is, you have to educate, and patiently, and it may take time. You want to gain your people's trust and not make quick decisions that cause things to unravel. All right, win their trust, and a lot of times these things will follow suit. Guys, that's all I have for your questions. I will do this again in the future, and we can cover more of them. So if you have questions, you can leave them in emails. Patreon members, you have a priority for me. Send them in the Patreon messaging section, and I will get to them as soon as I can. That's all I had, guys. I hope you're doing well and you're blessed, and we'll talk to you very soon.